Hello and welcome. Whether you are here out of interest or intrigue, either way, I hope you will find something of value at the Human Channel. I'd like to thank shishirratanart.com for supporting and enhancing this video. If you are looking out for a photographer, original abstract art on canvas, or looking to read a blog, head over to shishirratanart.com. Social media links are in the description. All right, folks, nice to have everyone join us today. And our episode is going to be talking about how do we coexist knowing that differences exist among each of us and yet we can maintain harmony. So on this topic, I have got a very special guest today. He is Mr. Rinesh Hegde. He is a dear friend and he is going to be talking about this topic in depth. So Rinesh, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? How are you doing, man?
Hey, thanks a lot, Shishir. First of all, obviously, thank you very much for considering me for this. We do tend to talk a lot about all these stuff as and when we meet, but trying to get to actually speak in a podcast kind of gives the chills. Tries to figure out that I have to be very careful on what I'm talking because it's always going to be there. But anyway, thank you very much. Hi, folks. My name is Rinesh Hegde. I am a Bombay boy, born and brought up there. Currently living in Bangalore. I work for a healthcare analytics company and as a senior project manager. With the front of what I do in my day-to-day life, well, be busy with what work is there with us, be busy with what family is, and be busy with my friends, my social life. These are some of the things which happens on a day-to-day basis. These are some of the things which I get tied up on a day-to-day basis, including our Saturdays and Sundays. Now that because of the lockdown which is happening, I think I tend to become more busy, obviously in front of the system now, but that's actually about me.
Oh no, Rinesh, I think that is enough. And when you say that you've been busy, but then most of the time you're in front of the computer, I'm sure a lot of people working from home can, concur with that. I've been locked down at my home, working from home, and there is practically no sense of timing as well. It's almost 24/7,
Seriously.
It seems.
Seriously.
So yeah, story of our lives.
But once you sit in front of the system,
Yeah.
things just keep piling up. And as I said, right, you do tend to have your friends also who might actually need some sort of a help. You might be trying to talk to them. You have your office related activity which keeps going on. And then at the end, luckily for me, at least my manager does not pushes me after 9 o'clock at night. He's like, dude, what are you doing right now? Just go to sleep. And I'm like, yeah, I just need to finish this email.
That is good.
But thank God for that, at least. Thank God for those small graces.
So Rinesh, when I first approached you, I understand that you actually also deal with a lot of, research on all kinds of topics. And believe me, all of those are, mighty interesting to me as well. And keeping the premise of the Human Channel, where we essentially are talking about how do humans treat other humans without biases. And that's next to impossible to really do, but does not mean that it is impossible to at least try. So I felt you would be someone who would bring a very unique angle to this perspective. So without further ado, why don't you get into your topic and let's start talking about that. So go ahead.
Thanks for this. It's actually a very vast topic which encompasses everything, and at that moment you will try to relate to certain things which is happening in your life, certain things which you must have seen in somebody else's life, and these are some of the things which actually makes you. I remember I would like to recollect one of the event which happened when I was, I think, 8 years or 9 years old. I was obviously reading my history book, and at that moment I was reading about how British had colonized India and how things actually were difficult, how things were actually different, and all these aspects were there. That was the first thing which I ever realized, or when I ever realized that, oh, India was not actually a free country right from the beginning. We were ruled by somebody. Now, as a small boy who never understood these concepts, I went and asked some of my friends. More than my friends, I actually asked my relatives. And these guys are the ones who were like, yeah, we had actually problems, but then we were able to come out of all these things and finally we were free. And that's how it worked out. I kind of had that feeling that, guys, I think this is not good. Somebody was ruling us. Somebody was torturing us. This is that hatred. I can't say it is a hatred of an 8-year-old boy, but that would have been like a very small thing, but it still was there. And that's exactly what unfortunately happens around us. Coming to today's date, we find news about things which are not good as per our way, things which are not right as per our way. That actually makes us hate these things. But let's say, for example, I would like to get out of this and step into the other person's shoes. I'm not even saying that what that other person might have done or has done or is doing is right. I'm just saying, let's try to understand the other person's perspective. You might be able to take a different take. You might not need to justify his or her actions, but it will give you a different take in understanding why that person did at that time. Today, when you listen to the whole geopolitical stuff around you, I've been recently reading a book called Prisoners of Geography by Tim Marshall. And it's a very beautiful intake of about how things actually change for you from one place to the other. He has kind of covered about different places, about the differences between happening between two cultures and how they actually clashes with each other. Now, thinking about all these aspects, yes, it's good to know. Yes, it kind of helps us in understanding that person, but where does it lead? Where does it lead us? No, nowhere. Till the time these lessons, these moral values maybe, all gets inculcated in us, and we try to ensure that the smaller steps which we take actually goes through that path. Now, with the same aspect as you were mentioning, that when we see that there are differences or there is a difference of opinion between two people, what do you do? Personally, I try to take a step back in understanding, why is this person telling me these things? Is it that he actually genuinely believes it, or does he have an ulterior motive to it, or is he going to get something out of it? Irrespective of any of these answers, sometimes I feel it is just that he wants to do this. He believes in it. In the story of Ramayana, when I used to read about it, I used to think, why would Ravana do any of these things which he was doing, even though he knew that they were wrong? He believed in it. I am not an expert in the subject. I am not even coming up and saying that I've understood it to the extent of what I'm trying to tell is absolutely right. But the moment that person believes in it, his path, which according to him might be right. The same goes for...
So Rinesh, let me barge in here and just, bring out one aspect. So I think when you say that, you're trying to think from another person's perspective, putting yourself in their shoes.
Yes.
What I'm reading there is that you're essentially trying to empathize and trying to see, let's just step back and see what is this person's side of the story.
I think that's the perfect word for it. Empathize. Yes. I'm trying to actually understand their point of view. And yes, I'm trying to empathize with that.
Got it. So, and the example that you also gave was quite interesting. Like in Ramayana, like any Indian, at least from our generation, has seen Ramayana and Mahabharata coming in the TV serials and all that. So, we have a fair amount of idea as to what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So now it's interesting, like, everyone also side with Lord Ram because he's the hero, he's the god, he's the positive, right? But then hardly anyone even talks about, Ravana, who is he's like the negative side of the story, the villain, the guy the bad guy essentially. To really understand the story in its complete form, I think it is important to see the both sides of it. And like you rightly said, right, Ravan probably knew what he's doing is wrong, but then he believed in that. And then what was that belief? What drove him to that? And I think as people, empathy is something that I feel is one of the cornerstones for harmony. What is your take on that?
I absolutely agree to that. But there are so many people who will come up and say, what's the point of this harmony when we both are just living a lie? There are so many people when it comes to having a certain political affiliations or believing in the right path towards the God which they believe in. They all feel that my path, my way is the best way. Your path, your way is the wrong. So there are I think I was actually thinking or talking about it to somebody, and I was saying that there are these certain kind of people. There is one kind who actually feels or says that your path is wrong, my path is right. I don't care about your path. I will continue with this. There is a certain set of people who might think your path is different, my path is different. Let me try to understand also your path. And if possible, can you please try understanding my path? And then there is a third set who just does not care about what's happening in this world. They just live their own life. So where are we? Are we in the first set of guys who are actually saying that your path is wrong, what's happening to it? So harmony is good, but there are so many cases where people come up and say, what's the point of this harmony when he is living a wrong life, or he is living a right, like this, I'm leading the right life, but what's the point of this? My friend is actually leading the wrong one. Shouldn't I actually try to ask him to come to this side? Shouldn't I actually try to ask him to believe in my portion?
So that is the path of an uncomfortable or an awkward sort of a harmony or peace, where you're just not accepting it, but you're bearing the other side of the story, essentially.
So we can definitely come up and sit in the table and come up and say, I don't like that person, I don't agree with that person, but since the harmony of the place needs to be there, I will just keep quiet. It unfortunately has come to the place where everywhere around you, you will find that small pockets of harmony. You definitely obviously find the other version of it, the disharmony around us, which is that people keep fighting. And then there are people who don't fight, but then they hate each other. In these two circumstances, who's affecting the most? I, myself, that's it. We tend to forget that aspect. We tend to forget that with these two things in our life, we are never going to be actually free from the burden of that whole discomfort, the whole anger, the whole hatred, which is always there in our mind, in our body, in our soul. As a matter of fact, I used to actually tell some of my folks, the first thing, if you want peace in your heart, and in your home, is please switch off the news channel. I actually used to genuinely believe that. If you need to know what is happening, get just the basic details, which coincidentally or luckily for us comes in the next day news. Trying to figure out what is happening at every given point of time will not give you that peace. And in today's date, according to Hindu mythology or the Hindu custom, we call it the Kali Yuga. The Kali Yuga actually talks about everything being in a mess. Then why do you want to add that mess in your life? Shouldn't the point be about trying to just get that piece, a small piece? In the entire vast scheme of the universe, we are just a fraction of, I think, a second, according to the universal time that we live. Then in that fraction of second, why do I want to actually worry about all these aspects? So harmony is good until and unless I try understanding the other person's perspective. I was recently talking to somebody about how different certain paths are. And that person was very adamant with a very nice way. He was not angry. He was not very, I would say, like really, really trying to force me to that point. But he was in a very subtle manner. He was saying that my path is the right path, Rinesh, but your path is wrong. Now, any given point of time, if somebody comes up and tells us that you are wrong, we get defensive. We actually like to put a barrier in front of us and say, how dare he come up and tell me I'm wrong? And it is very difficult to come up and say, or either agree to it or even listen to it. Forget the agreeing part. Hardly any one of us actually agree. At least we will listen to it. Unfortunately, we don't even do that. We see that right around us. As a matter of fact, teenagers, when they go and talk to their family, to their parents and tell them, Dad, I think you're wrong, Dad will suddenly be very defensive. I said, what? I have more experience than you. Why do you think I'm wrong? What makes you think that I'm wrong? In the same way, when the dad is going to come up and tell his son that you are wrong, that the son is or the daughter is going to be, what do you know about the world? You go to your office, you are with your older folks, we the younger generations of the future, we know what is right. That's always going to be the case. It's very difficult to actually have that kind of a harmony. And the end, the harmony, as per the mother of the house will be, do not talk to each other, just keep quiet and please eat your food. At the end, unfortunately, both of them are still in the same mess. And is that what we want? Yes, as teenagers, we were rebels, we did it, we understood it. But then we got that experience and realized where we might be right or where we might be wrong. The idea is to understand each other. And I think that's the first step of coming up and saying, yes, I kind of understand you. Maybe I might not agree with you, but I would like to understand more about these aspects.
So Rinesh, tell me about how do you bring about this sort of an attitude? Because see, it's very fundamental in nature the way I see it. To really not get defensive or not get angry if someone points a finger and says, "Hey, you're just on the wrong track, man. Come over here. This is the right path." So, developing
The thought
this
process
thought,
itself.
yeah, developing that thought that, hey, okay, if this guy is saying something, let's hear him or her out and see what's the side of the story. So how do you develop, like, what are you doing in your life to not be impulsive but rather be someone who pauses, thinks and proceeds?
I think there were certain things which actually happens with everybody's life. The first aspect itself is when we get out of our whole school system, when we actually join a college, we tend to meet people from different areas. I remember my father used to actually tell me that if you're choosing a college, choose a college which is not in your residential area. Try to get out of here so that you get to mingle with more people. My first connection with the world happened when I joined college in my 11th and 12th standard in Bombay. So I was living in a place called Borivali. So from there I moved all the way to the town side to Matunga, where I actually started meeting more people. I started meeting people from the Dharavi area. And these guys, they used to live I used to think I lived in a smaller house, which is just 500 square feet. These guys were living in like 100 square feet and there are like 4 or 5 of them. It's way too smaller than that. So I started understanding how they are, what is happening to them, the happiness which they used to showcase, the sadness which they had. All these are the smaller things. Now that's an easy way to connect with other folks. Similarly, afterwards, I was able to actually join an engineering college. I started understanding more people. The biggest example would be experience, or the biggest answer I would say is experience. Experience or mingling with other people, understanding them, talking to them, trying to connect with their stories maybe, are some of the first things which actually make you start understanding people. The moment you want to put up a barrier, coming and saying that, you know what, I am right because I went through this path is absolutely right, that's the moment you actually will not be able to connect with anybody. On the other hand, it is always a good thing to listen more than talk. Unfortunately, it comes from me, wherein I like to talk a lot, but there are times when I've actually started listening to some folks and it just does wonders.
Where you are not someone who's putting a barrier. So, when you were saying that, I was imagining something like a sponge. You
Yes.
put a sponge in a bucket of water, it's going to absorb and almost become like one, with the
Part of
surroundings. So you can still find a sponge in the ocean, although it has absorbed all the water, it still retains itself, but it is also in
Yes.
harmony with the water around it. And when you said, when you start putting barriers, I imagined a sponge but wrapped up in a
Some
plastic
aluminum
kind of
foil.
a thing. Yeah, aluminum or a plastic thing. So you still cannot say, oh, I'm open, I have an open mind, and you still can't have a barrier. And yeah, so that's a good one. Let me delve a little more on the point where you said you reached out to a different college away from home, and then you mingled with people and understood their side of the story. So let's talk a little about how does social circles really matter. Like, what are you doing in your life to influence yourself by others' thoughts and still find harmony in differences? I hope you're enjoying the episode. I just wanted to take a brief moment to say that we are open to feature your business or podcast on our channel. If you're interested, please drop a line on Facebook or Instagram to talk details. And now, let's continue with the episode.
So I think this is around 6 years or 7 years back when I had moved from Bombay to Bangalore for my work, as well as I got married at that time. So my silly wife did not want it to come to Bombay. Jokes apart, actually, on that. The thing is, she was trying to find a job there. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. So I said, okay, let me try finding something in Bangalore. And coincidentally, I did get it. So I did come to Bangalore, but I was like in an alien place where I couldn't, like, I don't know whom to talk to. I had no group, I had no friend circle. So it was kind of at a point wherein I was like, okay, I'm sitting at home, max to max. I do go out once in a while to maybe buy some stuff or see some places, visit, go to the theaters, and that was there, but it was all family. And trust me, it's amazing because my family actually are like at any given point of time, if we say we are meeting, there are like 25, 30 people coming in, actually standing together. So you will never feel lonely. But then there are always a time that we kind of think, okay, this is my family, my in-laws, and everybody is there. I would like to have a social circle or a social group which I would like to understand. And that's when I came to know a little bit more about Freemasonry. The idea was to actually just join this group, maybe for the social side, because I honestly had not much, as in not that kind of an idea of what Freemasonry was all about, because I had read about it during my engineering time, and it was one of the cool things. Or some people used to say, oh boy, I don't know what's happening inside. We need to actually understand all these things. Maybe let me just read something about it. That's it. That reading never happened. That understanding never happened. And coincidentally, I found one in my own family. And then I approached him and asked him that, is it okay if I also join? Sure, no problem. I think the first couple of events when it happened, when I met some of the people, that's where I found my social crowd. And this is one place where I realized that we had the old, the young, and the aged, all of them, all in one place, just having a hearty laugh over either a plate of rice and sambar on their hand and coming up and saying, you know what, this food is so good, man. I should actually eat this more than I eat that. That was the discussion which happened in the first day. And I was literally looking at them. I said, these guys are so content in their life. I don't know what's happening. As in, why is he so excited? And he was like, you know what, it was such a bad day in office. And I just felt so amazing when I came here and I met you guys and everything. I was trying to get that whole connection. Yes, for me, I think it took me at least like 2 or 3 meetings. And then I started like contacting them, talking to them, and understood who they are. The guy who joined with me, his name was Feroz Murad. This dude became like one of my best pals at that time, because he knew more about Freemasonry than I should, or I did at that moment. So when I was sitting with him, he was explaining me certain things. Rinesh, do you know the philosophy of this? What do you think this happens? And there was no barrier. And we all know what's happening, what happens around our world. It's so difficult to actually mingle with a person who is not of the same faith, who doesn't stay in the same state, who is not from your same place. Everything. There is so much of differences, and we tend to find that differences in each other. That finding the differences itself is a barrier. And here is a guy who is sitting right next to me, telling me things which I might not know, and just imparting that stuff, that knowledge to me, without me asking for it, without me actually coming up and saying, I don't want to talk to you or something. He just gave it. And I kept on absorbing, listening to it. And when I listened to him, it was so interesting at that moment that he and me became kind of very close friends. We used to ensure that we come during the meeting, then we will sit together, we will talk about certain aspect which is happening. Because for me, I was still a very new person in this whole group. And for me, that group became a family. That group which I started looking forward every month when I used to meet them. Unfortunately, my friend actually had to move out, and for his further education, he had to move to Delhi, and we kind of lost touch of each other. Once in a while, kind of say hi, hello to him. But I remember the way he actually was able to connect. And it was simply amazing.
So it looks like, you essentially focused on expanding your social circles. You focused on meeting people from different walks of life, different locations and whatnot. And then you went a step further and you discovered Freemasonry, and that seems to have expanded your purview of what human connections are all about, and you even made a friend. And so let's talk a little more about that. How did Freemasonry influence you? Because I believe that is one of the latest things that you're in your journey, so to speak.
Yes
That's helping out. So let's talk a little more about that.
Okay, so Freemasonry is a fraternal organization. It's technically not much of a difference when it comes to some other social group which must have come together. But Freemasonry has some differences, has some esotericism, you have some philosophies which are explained, which are spoken about, which are discussed among each other. That's how we kind of bind with each other. It's very, very old. It's officially 303 years old, but unofficially we call it like around 500, 600 years old. So as a humble beginning of starting from the stonemasons, the guild which used to be formed in Europe, when the masons used to come together, the people who actually built the cathedrals, the church, they used to come together. They used to form a smaller group called lodge. And that lodge was supposed to be a building right next to the place where they're constructing. In today's date, we have a site office. That was a lodge in the olden time. Now, where they used to actually discuss how the construction should go on, or who is actually feeling better or well, or what's happening, how many workers does one have, how many people are actually there today, or is there some sort of a problem with respect to materials. All these things were being discussed in a lodge. Now, the people actually used to stay in the same place, and that's when in the evening, they used to just sit and relax and kind of think about the work which they have done in the day. And that kind of gave them an idea of what exactly they need to do as in for tomorrow. From that humble beginning, we move on to come to the point of being Freemasons. So from stonemasons, obviously after some time when, thanks to the printing press by Gutenberg, we had a lot of books about how to construct some of these things, and the entire story, or rather the entire knowledge, or rather some of the knowledge of building these buildings kind of got spread. Many people started joining the trade, and the overall idea of the close-knit group staying right next to the construction site, working on all the construction and moving on and understanding, learning, all kind of dwindled down. And that's when some other folks who still liked that idea came into this group and said, let's just continue with the same tradition, add a little bit of a philosophy into it, or maybe the existing philosophy, we will expand that. And from stonemasons, we came to Freemasons. The word free is added over here because they were supposed to be free men who were not bonded with labor, even though these are the same people who were bonded with the work which they were doing, but they were not slaves. They were free men. They had their own mind, they had their own set of thought which they wanted to interact with. So then Freemasons came, and we still call ourselves the smaller group as a lodge. So in my lodge, the first thing which I ever noticed, and I think that also kind of taught me on how this kind of values are required, are important in our day-to-day work, in our day-to-day life, was we used to keep all the 5 volumes of sacred law. We call them volumes of sacred law because they are technically the books which has moral values mentioned in it. So for a Christian, it's the Bible. For a Hindu, it's the Bhagavad Gita. For the Muslim, it's the Quran. For the Parsis, it is the Zend Avesta. And for the Sikh, it is the Guru Bani. So all these things used to be kept right there. We were not teaching about religion. We were not talking about religion, but it was kept there. So that's the first thing which I ever noticed. And I asked them, why is all these things kept there? And a senior person came and told me that, Rinesh, these are the things which teaches us the moral principles. So I said, but why do we need it? I thought Freemasonry will teach me something different. I said, no, Freemasonry teaches you the same thing. It's just that because in this whole new crazy world, we have forgotten these principles. Why? Because we are no longer following it. But here is a group which literally wants to follow the same principles. And I'm not saying literally in the sense of what is written in the book to follow that. They follow the good things about everything, which is behave with the other person the same way you expect that person to behave with you. Love thy neighbor, which is the most common one which I have read in the Bible. Follow the path of God, which Quran always talks about. What is the path of God? Doesn't mean that I need to go to the temple or the mosque or the church on a regular basis and be there. Maybe for some folks, but for some people, it is all about human connection. It's about treating another person properly. We have so many stories. As a matter of fact, I used to connect this with the Panchatantra story and the Aesop's fables, which you used to have, which used to talk about those animals and the stories which used to happen. Everywhere at the end, there is a moral principle or moral law mentioned there. Where there is a will, there is a way. There were so many of them. And all these things used to teach us these stuff. Doesn't mean that the stories are true. Doesn't mean that they actually must have happened. But those stories, those things actually taught us those small morals. And that moral is also available in all our books. We just need to pick it up. And once you pick it up, it kind of transforms you. And how is that going to happen? Not by reading the book every now and then. Maybe for some people it is, but the biggest example which I've realized is experience, is the human connection. So when I see somebody following those things, I kind of get really attracted to that point. I'm like, wow, look at this, the way this person behaved. And that actually connects with me, and I was able to connect with it. It is not, Freemasonry might not be different when it comes to the overall aspect of it being different from the Lions Club or the Rotary Club. If you are able to get that kind of a connection with these organizations, so be it. That connection, you will get it even with a small social club or a small book club which you must have started, wherein you start understanding each other. Just imagine if I'm sitting in front of a person who has read a new book and he comes and explains that to me, or she is able to present the entire view to me. I'm like, wow, this is so amazing. How are you able to do that? When I try understanding, when I try learning from that person, I'll be able to be like, wow, this is so good. I think I should incorporate this with me. If a person in our office is able to take notes properly and maintain the entire structure properly in a manual manner rather than relying on a system, I would be more than awe about it and come and stand next to the person and say, can you please teach me? Why? Because this is going to help me.
Fascinating. The insights that you have given, Rinesh, are one of a kind, I would say, because to begin with, you have very nicely you have put it, actually, that experience and human connections is the key. And going back to the first thing that we spoke of in the beginning of our episode, you mentioned that the uncomfortable harmony, you might be keeping quiet, but you're just bearing, and it's kind of like bottling up the emotions that will one day burst the bottle, and then it just gets messy, right? But then
Yes.
interacting with people, talking with people, understanding their side of the story, and seeing where the rationale lies. Maybe they are also not aware of your side of the story, and so you both sort of connect and then realize that, oh, this is something I did not know, and today I learned something. And then together we realize that, yeah, there are differences, but then again, we both need not be right or wrong, right?
Exactly.
And we understand each other why it is the way it is, and then we move with our life forward and don't make things messy. And I'm also understanding your emphasis on having a varied social circle, and I believe that is where your first influence of your college life and then later on Freemasonry has actually helped you to broaden your perspective, open your mind by meeting with different people. And to a lot of our listeners, I'm sure they would have also got insights into masonry and what it is all about, which normally they would not find online, because when I search, if I search Freemasonry, I get all kinds of things which seem like as though, my god, these guys are gonna rule the world. And then you have a guy who's saying this rice sambar is amazing.
Exactly. I was so amazed with the way, and I have visited some of the places in different areas and everything, that fraternal bonding, when it happens, right, it is something which you will be able to find even with an army man. I was talking to this army person who was coming up and saying that they both graduated from the same place. So they were able to connect with each other very quickly. You know what? This is how it used to work. Remember, in our time, it used to be like this. That connection, just imagine now that kind of a connection around the world. Today, if I actually go to any place, that's the same thing with, I would say that's the same thing with any social group which is actually huge. You are able to connect with them. Why? Because you are all part of the same bond. And that itself is superb. That itself actually makes you do a lot of things. We might have met our school gang after so many years. We might have met either our seniors or juniors. Can you just recollect that whole moment? Let's say, for example, today you met your junior. You will come up and say, do you remember the professor who used to teach you this or teach us this? And you'll be like, yeah, I know. You know what? How pain he was, or how amazing he was. How do you get that connection? That connection is God. You get it because of the same group. At the end, we all need to actually remember that we are still human. Maybe my color might be different. Maybe as per my Hinduism style, the Gotra might be different. But does it differ from the fact that internally we are all the same? Everybody thinks my facial representation or the color of my skin actually defines this and how we are behaving. We are seeing it every day. But for one day, just stop thinking about it. the John Lennon's song, where there is no heaven or hell and we just live a life, we will be able to see that the heaven and hell, everything is right around us. Why don't we just live this life? Just be happy with that. Difficult, but not impossible. People are there, people with different colors, different race, creed, religion, everything will be there. But let's just be human for 1 second, or maybe that 1 second for the universal time, not by our second.
Perfect, and this is one line that I've used in one of my previous podcasts, that if you strip away the skin, you're just left with muscles and bones, and you really can't look at that and say, oh, this looks like an Indian, or this person looks like a Christian. We are all the same under the skin. It's just that it's our mind that tends to mess things up by bringing in biases and filters that really do no real good. I mean, humankind has been on earth for like thousands of years, and we have fought over the silliest of things. If you see in the grand scheme of things, a lot of the war has been fought over religion, over property, power, money, you name it. I mean, there's this we could go on this. I mean, history is written in human blood. Let's just put it that way. That's a true fact. We have killed each other left, right, and center. But even after that, from a few hundred people on the earth to billions of people on the earth, even after all the epidemics, pandemics, and wars, we have grown to such a huge size. And if we continue harboring such polarizing or dividing attitudes, imagine 1 billion people fighting with each other. Where is this planet gonna go?
Oh my God!
Unless Elon Musk,
I think exactly. I was coming there. I was coming to that point.
Go for it.
That's why I think we need another planet. That is why we are keeping our hopes on some guy who is going to find a pathway over there and maybe build something so that we can just leave this. But that's again is your the harmony which you were talking about. I don't like it, but I'm kind of living with it. That's not what we want. I think at the end of the day, when you finish your work and when you're about to go to sleep, there should be some peace in my mind. Me trying to think what has been happening some hundreds of miles away, and those things are being troubled, or this thing is being changed. There is a very famous line we must have heard right from our beginning, from our childhood, was that ideal mind is a devil's workshop. Literally, the ideal mind is being created right now thanks to the polarizing statements happening, thanks to certain social media. I can't say every other social media is wrong. We get good and bad. But why can't we actually just take the good? When we make tea, we don't try to take the tea leaves and try to eat them. The tea leaves have served its purpose. It was boiling, it was giving the color, it was giving the fragrance, it was giving the taste. It finished its purpose. We literally removed everything out of it and then we threw it. We are not disregarding it by saying, oh, now it's of no use, but its purpose is done. So we removed the good out of it, but threw the things which are of no use. Why can't we live our life like that? When I meet a person, I know that person might have some motive which is not right or which is wrong or whatever it is. Let's just take the good stuff out of him. Let's just take the good stuff out of a book and just leave it. Why do I need to absorb everything? As a sponge, sometimes, as you were saying, that the sponge absorbs everything but retains its own value. That's exactly what I would like to do. Absorb good stuff. Retain the things which is not right. And just leave it.
Perfect. And that brings us to a closure of this episode. And what a nice way to close, actually, Rinesh, the way you put it. And I'm sure the listeners would also, agree to this. When the conversation is good, as a host, I would just love to keep on listening. But then again, we also have to make sure that, it doesn't get so long that people are not able to listen to it in one sitting. But then again, if the content is good, people will listen to it and they will enjoy it. So I hope everyone listening to this, and I'll also make a YouTube video. I try to make YouTube videos out of the audio podcast that I do. So those of you who would want to watch can also go to the YouTube channel. All the links will be there in the description. And with that, Rinesh, I thank you so much for your time. It was a short notice and you agreed so readily, and I was sure it would be an amazing conversation with you.
I would like to thank you for that, because you allowed me to spend that time, and that time, this is unscripted. We didn't decide on what needs to be done. we were talking about some human connection and it just comes out. And if by any chance I must have like harmed anybody with my words, I am really sorry about that. But please do reach out to Shishir and ask them they want to talk to me and explain their point of view. I am more than happy to listen to it, because that will teach me something. Maybe it might change some perspective. Maybe it might allow me to build on my own thoughts. But everything is a learning. Let's learn from each other.
Completely agree on that. And at the end of the day, you cannot, or anyone, we can't please everybody, but it is possible to offend everyone.
Yes. So easy. So
yes.
Easy.
We just hope that people, take a leaf out of your book and don't get offended real quick, but rather pause, think, and then proceed. So, and like Rinesh mentioned, he's also available. So if someone wants to reach out. So that brings me to one question. So Rinesh, you mentioned about Masonry and you're a Freemason. So if
Yes.
Someone wants to know more about Masonry or wants to even join Masonry, how does one go about it?
Okay, so I have the Facebook page for my lodge, but it is better that you can actually approach me. You can search me by my name, Rinesh Hegde. I have a very silly photo of mine on Facebook, so you will realize it. I'm looking down somewhere, I don't know why, but that's one. I have an Instagram page also. You can just search on Rinesh Hegde. You should be able to find it. Please do connect with me in case if you need to know anything. Maybe it's the silliest answer you might think, but there is nothing as silly questions. Please do ask. I'm also on Twitter. You can just search me with my name and you will be able to find it. Please do reach out to me in any of these ways. And I think I should be able to answer one or two questions, or maybe help you in realizing this is the right or not the right thing for you.
Perfect. And just adding on to that, what is the basics, basic requirement for anybody to join Freemasonry?
The basic for us is, first, the person needs to be at least more than 18 years of age. We prefer normally a person who is a working class, so that he can actually manage his family life or his financial properly. The second important thing is he needs to know a Freemason to be a Freemason. So now as I said, you can obviously reach out to me. I should be able to talk to you. We will try to speak. And then I become kind of like the person who will introduce you to Freemasonry. And the third most important aspect is one needs to believe in a supreme being. The word supreme being is not in capitals or anything of that sort. We are saying that you believe in the God which you believe in. That should be more than enough. Tomorrow, if you come up and tell me that you believe in a higher power which you cannot even name, fair enough. Tomorrow, you want to say you believe in something which you can actually name, fair enough. Because somewhere down the line, we all have realized that God does not play dice with the universe. There has to be some sort of a rule. So that rule is something which actually governs us. Maybe you believe in that. So please do come with that perspective so that it actually helps you in understanding. Just to be very clear, we are not a religious organization. That is, I'm not asking you that's the reason why you need to believe, but it is easier to explain, to comprehend the concepts, the philosophies of Freemasonry when somebody believes in a higher power, a power which might not govern you or which might govern you. Whatever you feel is right, it's okay. But that higher power kind of deviates or creates the path which is required. It creates multiple paths, that's what I feel, but it kind of does that.
So now we are all clear as to what is the basic requirements for Freemasonry, and you even now have a person who can help you with understanding further. So feel free to reach out to Rinesh. Rinesh, we can share links in the description to
Yes.
reach out to you and the social media handles. So I think anyone who's interested can click on those and reach out to you as well. So I think that should work out. All right. So that brings us to the end. Thank you everybody for listening, and thank you once again, Rinesh, for your time. You have a very good day, man. Bye-bye.
You too. Thanks a lot. See you then. Bye.
Well then, I hope you found something of interest in today's podcast. And if you did, please do share for more and share the channel among like-minded people. The Human Channel signing off.